Welcome to today's episode of the Psych Soul podcast, where we explore the concept of self-shamanism to live epic through psychedelic integration. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited about today's interview. Before I introduce today's guest, just a quick disclaimer per usual that our podcast is for educational purposes only, and it does not in any way, shape, or form condone the use of illicit substances or partaking in any illegal activities, and any psychedelic ceremonies mentioned in this episode have been conducted in locations where medicine is legal and facilitated through proper containers. If you do make a choice to engage with powerful psychedelics and plant medicines, please do so mindfully. My guest today is someone that is near and dear to my heart. It's a person that I feel extremely fortunate and blessed to call a dear friend, and also one of the only people I call my teacher. Dr. Richard Grossman's fascination with healing started quite early in his life, as triggered in part by severe childhood trauma. His spiritual search also started early. By the age of 15, he had concluded that the only reason to be alive was to help others out of their suffering. It was the beginning of his calling to the path of the healer. Richard has been a practicing doctor of Asian medicine since the 80s. He's earned many advanced degrees, including master's and a PhD in Oriental medicine. And shortly after his lifelong interest in healing emerged again, was triggered by ayahuasca. And since then, he has been recognized for the healing work that he does in ceremonial settings internationally. So this is the formal bio. And I would also like to add that having had the privilege of sitting in Dr. Grossman ceremonies multiple times in the earlier days of my own personal psychedelic renaissance, Richard has witnessed me in some of the darkest and most vulnerable moments of my lifetime, on many different levels of reality. He's been there for me in seasons of dark nights of the soul, of life transitions. He has received and reflected some of what may be my fiercest projections, including a time when I believed that I was spiritually possessed. Richard, do you remember that one?
Eyes roll.
So including this time where I believed that I was spiritually possessed, and I literally sat there in a cafe in Topanga telling him that ayahuasca told me that one day I will serve medicine. And not once have I felt judged, shamed, canceled, ostracized. Like there can be, I feel like sometimes, by people in our community that have been walking the walk for a long time and they've seen it all, that they potentially have less patience for newbies like I was and back in the day. But I have to say that there was nothing there for me but compassion and unconditional love. And in the way that only medicinal elders, again, that have seen a thing or two can provide. And this was some of the deepest integration medicine and healing that I've ever been privileged to receive. So without further ado,
Thank you.
Dr. Richard Grossman, welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have a chat again. We've had some chats and interviews in previous times, but I want to start off today's conversation by stating that you arguably may have one of the world's most epic jobs, a traveling shaman and a mystic.
Yep.
So before we dive into what that looks like, I would love if you can take us back to the earlier days of the journey to describe or paint the picture of who you were prior to embodying this particular role.
I have to say that this is all in my upcoming book in detail, which is finished now. You've been part of my journey on that, and it should be published in the next couple months. It's called The Medicine of Your Life. And, my story really, there was no direct point when I realized I wanted to be a healer. It was kind of a background to my entire life, even from childhood. When I was a young lad of about I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 years old or 11 years old. I don't remember exactly when. We had a project in school of what do you want to be when you grow up? Of course, every child about that age is going to make that decision for the rest of their life. It's a stupid assignment. But the classroom had the usual gamut of I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a whatever it was. And what I thought about it, while we were doing this assignment, and I said, well, what I want to do is study the effects of plants on the mind. And I have to let you know that at that point, I had no idea what plants were. I had no idea, other than the green things in the backyard. I had no idea what the mind was, and I had no idea what the effect of plants on the mind could be. I had no clue, nothing, zero, period, nothing, other than I grew up in my dad's pharmacy, and he had the little area where there were herbs back in the old days. So that was what I wanted to do. And my really decision to pursue ayahuasca as a life path happened during my first ceremony with the medicine. Um, so long ago, I don't even want to say how long ago it was, but it was a long time ago. And it was such an intensely powerful experience that all I could say was, I want to do this. I want to give this to people. I want to help people through things like what I went through, the healing that I experienced in that first ceremony. So that started it. And it took me a good 20 more years to get to the place where I could actually say I'm serving medicine now. So it wasn't like I went down to the Amazon for 2 weeks and came back, and got tattoos on my face, was wearing weird Amazon clothes and necklaces, and changed my name to Shaman Ananda Richard or something. It's like I never went through a conversion experience like that.
I feel like we're kind of like looking into the future of like the shaman that you've become. But I want to trace back because I thought I heard you say that it was when you were about 9 years old that you knew that you wanted to study plants and their effects on the brain
Yes.
and potentially the psyche. How can you explain to have that level of clarity, that soul dharmic clarity and understanding what you're were meant the path that you were meant to
I can't
walk
explain that.
at
I
such
have
a
no
tender
idea.
age.
Um, my mom went to UCLA Biomedical Center or the hospital there and was like, what's he talking about? I don't know. He has to have a name for this, for his assignment, his class assignment. And somebody said psychopharmacologist. And, I want to be a fireman. I want to be a psychopharmacologist. So
Okay.
I don't
Well,
call
what do
myself,
you
well,
call
I call
yourself
myself
then now?
Richard. I don't really like any titles. If I'm doing
Mm.
acupuncture, Chinese medicine, I want to be Dr. Grossman because then I'm actually in the role of a doctor. When I'm leading ceremonies, I don't really, maybe the closest I will get is I'm shamanizing. I don't want to be called a shaman. I don't want to be called a guru or a teacher or anything. I want to just do what I do. Richard's good.
Okay, so you were sitting in ceremony and then it had this massive impact on you and your healing. And you realized immediately that this was a particular avenue that you wanted to pursue with ayahuasca. So, care to share a little bit more about
Oh,
that particular ceremony and what
um,
was so meaningful
the
about it?
setting was that I had basically recently graduated from 3 years of intensive study of Oriental medicine. And at that point, I had just passed my state board exams. And I think I loved what I was doing. I was already starting practice, baby practice, not a practice with babies, but a baby practice, to be clear. And there was still something in me that was like, well, there has to be something else. This is powerful medicine. It's not getting to the soul level. And that could be a reflection of my abilities. I don't know, but I wasn't where I wanted to be yet anyway. So I went, a friend of mine invited me to work with him one on one with ayahuasca. And I did. He gave me a tremendously large dose, I believe. And, I went through the first stage of the kaleidoscopic patterns, and it's like, oh, this is nice. This is beautiful. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like this stuff. And then I took a breath and I was in a Nazi concentration camp, like full on immersion, 3D, sight, sounds, everything except smells. And I was in a line to go to the gas chamber, basically. And, I'm in this line and it's like, I don't like this at all. What am I doing here? And how do I get out of this? This is like, I wanted to ask for help. I couldn't get my voice to work. I wanted to escape. I couldn't escape. I wanted more kaleidoscopic psychedelic colors and patterns and, gods and goddesses up in the heavens and all that stuff. But I was in a concentration camp. And this is like still in my life, one of the most important lessons. I said, what do I do? I didn't ask God. I didn't ask the medicine. I just said, what do I do? And this feeling, this voice, this intelligence came in and said, trust and forgive. And that pissed me off. That really pissed me off. Like, how do I forgive this? Come on. How do I trust this? Who do I trust? What do I trust? Where is there anything in this situation that I can trust? And the voice came back, trust and forgive. Very simple, not booming, loud voice coming from the heavens, just a gentle, soft voice, and trust and forgive. So I kept on thinking about this. Like, do I forgive Hitler? Do I forgive the Nazis? What is forgiveness? And when I get to what is forgiveness, something really beautiful happened in that I recognized that forgiveness was letting go of every possible connection to the experience of what that was. Not making it okay by forgiving, but letting those imprints and patterns that were carried in me, because it had to be from somewhere and it had to be in me because it was my experience. Even if it was in the unconscious, the cosmic unconscious mind or the universal unconscious mind, it was still in me. So I just went, okay, I'm going to let go. And I let go and let go and let go and trusted. And forgiveness became letting go of every imprint and idea and image and judgment that was in me about that situation. And ultimately, it was letting the past be the past and let the past be washed away by the movement of time, because already it was many years past when that was happening, decades past, but it was still in me. And that's when I realized the depth of that. It didn't end there, by the way. It went on to like maybe 10 different scenes out of history where people were utterly and totally cruel to humans. And in each one, they got progressively more horrible in a way. But in each one, it was like, what do I do? Trust and forgive. And then it was like, bam, 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 down the trail of time until I was sitting in that room and coming back into my body perfectly free of, well, maybe not perfectly free because it still had a lot of work to do, but free of at least those images in which I trusted and forgave. And my feeling, I won't call it a realization, I won't call it a reality, but my feeling there was that I'm going to jump into an analogy here. If you see the V shape of geese flying in the sky, this is not maybe technically true, but a V shape of geese flying in the sky, there's a goose at the front, and the goose at the front is leading the V, leading the flock. And perhaps no other goose in the flock knows where the leader at the top is taking them. So my feeling was that in some way, in these kind of states of deep forgiveness, perhaps, just perhaps, that by my forgiving something on that level of profundity, on that level of depth, perhaps allowed for some of the geese that may not even know they're flying in a flock to also allow them to, in some way, make it easier for them to release those patterns and impressions and fears and hatreds within inside of themselves. That's the story.
It's interesting. Just a few hours ago, I had a conversation with a good friend of mine. He's a Jungian psychotherapist and also a descendant to Holocaust survivors. And he also just came back from a trip to Israel where he was sharing reports of how the country is very much distraught. I mean, we're currently recording the episode exactly 6 months after October 7th. There's still no ceasefire. Gaza's up in flames. I don't know how many people are displaced from their homes, both on the Palestinian and the Israelis. And the hostages are still not home. So he was questioning, well, how could I believe in God? How could we believe in God when this happened? Where was God during October 7th? Where was God during the time that my grandparents were in the concentration camp? I'm curious
God
to hear
is in
what
the
your
same
thoughts on
place
that
God
would be.
always is, within the deepest part of our being. And the idea of God as the puppet master, God is some dude or dudess up in heaven, controlling things on earth, is a child's concept of what divinity is. It's one that we have to outgrow, because I don't care where you look or how you look, you're not going to find somebody up on a throne in heaven. However, the reality of the connection of self to an infinite experience, or an experience of infinity, which is God by its very nature, omniscient, omnipresent, and present everywhere. And when I mean everywhere, I don't mean like on all the face of the earth. I mean from the smallest atom, smallest subatomic particles, and the space between those particles, which is vast at that level, all the way to the farthest galaxies in space, every dimension, every dimensional reality, all the alternative realities. God permeates that, but not as the anthropomorphic idea of God that we have, or that we've been taught, which is a concept maybe good for children, maybe good for the childhood of humanity. But personally, I think it's time to outgrow that concept. And I think that's one of the powers of a good, powerful psychedelic experience, is that you become aware of that, even if just a little tiny bit of it. And a tiny bit of infinity is pretty infinite.
In Kabbalah, they say, or Kabbalah, which is the Jewish studies of Jewish mysticism, which I find very like another framework for integration almost, or rather integration is almost
Yes.
like a framework of Kabbalah, or can be seen as such. So that school positions divinity and God as existence in itself, meaning absolutely everything, both the infinite and the so-called void, and everything you said, from the smallest atom to the largest material things. God is all. God is all things. So why is there evil
Wonderful.
in the world? And just this morning again, I was reading about this in the Kabbalah book that I've been reading, called Kabbalah for Beginners, because I'm just literally a beginner, and I'm just getting to know this field, and it's very interesting to me because I do see a lot of crossovers between, again, consciousness, the psychedelic realm, and the way that I understand the world, to the concepts outlined in Kabbalah. And the answer that I got to this particular query that I feel a lot of people ask, including my friend who asked, well, why is there even why how could there be evil in the world? How could God tolerate evil in the world? And the straight quote on that from the book was that evil and suffering are meant to make us more conscious, so that we begin to question why things happen the way that they do. Where is the goodness in the world? And that in fact, if everything was good in the world and we didn't have those contrasts, then we wouldn't be able to appreciate goodness. So, in that sense, the evil is also part of God's doing. And at least, again, this
Yeah,
is how Kabbalah outlines it.
I would tend to disagree with that. Sorry. Sorry, thousands of rabbis, tens of thousands of rabbis, but I would tend to disagree with that. But
Yeah.
subtly so. I don't think evil is
Yeah.
God's. Again, I don't particularly believe the idea of God as the puppet master playing chess with our human lives. I don't buy that. It doesn't make any sense to me. Because for the simple reason that if God is omnipresent, that's a huge idea. Every dimension, every atom, every particle in the entire universes, all universes, beyond all universes, past, present, and future. Does God really pay attention to the things that we do here? I don't know. I don't know. Um, but the subtle correction I would have in that is that the experience of evil, the experience of pain, the experience of suffering is not being given to me as a lesson or as a punishment, but the fact that that experience is present in my life allows me the opportunity to learn from it, to question, to find deeper meaning within myself of what it is. If God creates suffering, then we have a cruel God, even if it's to teach us something. Why doesn't God create us as being perfect without the need to suffer, already having that desire and questions inside of us? It's because that's not how the universe works. But everything that happens to me gives me an opportunity to learn, gives me an opportunity to grow, gives me an opportunity to differentiate what is real from what is not real in existence. Is my pain real? Of course, when I'm experiencing it, it's very real. But is my pain from 5 years ago real? It's not real. It just exists as a figment of my imagination, or perhaps as patterns in my body. But it's my belief in it. It's my focus on it. It's my holding on to it. Even if the holding on to it is done so subtly, I don't know that I'm holding on to it. That creates suffering. I do not believe God wants us to suffer, whatever God is. Even an anthropomorphic God would not want his humans to suffer because he created us or she created us. But I don't believe in the anthropomorphic viewpoint of God. So again, what is my opportunity in any given moment to become a more whole, integral, beautiful, loving, kind human being? What is my opportunity to release? It's like, have you ever backpacked? So if you start off your backpack and somebody to prank you puts 3 bricks in your backpack, the bottom of your backpack, and you're carrying it, and you're carrying it, and you're carrying it, and you're carrying it, and it's so heavy, and your shoulders hurt, and your back hurts, and then you unpack your suitcase, find those 3 bricks, take them off and throw them to the side of the road. That's letting go. What if you put the bricks in there yourself and forgot you put them in there? That's letting go. An analogy for letting go. It doesn't have to be hard work or painful. Might be, but it doesn't have to be. That's the beauty to me of ayahuasca. It really does allow for releasing those patterns and images from the past that no longer, the phrase I really like to use, it allows them to return to the unreality that they already are.
That is fascinating. And a lot of people that drink medicine, that approach ayahuasca, do discover their belief in God, right? And I'm one of those people, by the way. I grew up in a traditional Jewish home, even religious, but I never believed in that God that I was taught. I even completely rebelled against it. And only when I began drinking ayahuasca, began feeling a connection to some type of a divine entity that was infinite, that was omnipresent, that was within me, and that made me feel whole again. It reminded me that I am whole and that was never broken. So in some ways, I believe that I became even more
Yes.
religious after drinking ayahuasca, more than I ever have been before. Having that experience of God, of those parts of myself that are divine, that do have light, right along with the darkness, right? And I'm curious, what has been your experience as an ayahuasca facilitator when pouring the medicine to people that seek healing, seek to be whole again, seek to let go? What are some of the core teachings that you hope that they gain from this medicine?
I would say, I think the most important is you don't have to carry the pain of the past. I think that's, get those bricks out of that backpack. You put them there, or you chose to have them put there, or you allowed them to be there. Why not release them? Why not let them go? See what that feels like. I think that's one of the biggest opportunities of ayahuasca. And, ayahuasca is the purge. You can purge up the second grade teacher that told you you were stupid. You could purge up the heartbreaks. You can purge up the disappointments, the bad choices, the things that were done to you, the things you did to somebody else. You can release those during a ceremony. And why is there evil? It's because we hold on to those ideas and images of the past and respond to reality through those traumas. We're seeing it. We see it every time there's a war. People are angry not about what the present is, but about what happened in the past. And so much of this stuff you can probably, well, you could trace it back thousands of years. This unbroken chain of, you know, ah, 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 ah. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. 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 You know, and I believe that by releasing it, a human being could discover peace. We talk about peace, we sing about peace, we pray for peace. How many people actually know peace within? Very few. Otherwise, the world would be a very different place. We don't need, going back, we don't need lessons if our hearts are at peace. Shit still may happen. It's the nature of life. And there still may be opportunity to grow deeper and deeper and deeper because on an infinite path, every step a human being takes is still their first step. There's still an infinite amount to go. I mean,
Hmm.
where the current situation is Ukraine versus Russia, Israel versus Gaza, Gaza versus Israel, Russia versus Ukraine. What a mess. What a mess. And how far back does the Israel versus, Jew versus Muslim go? Pre-Muslim, pre-Islam. You know, there's never been, there had been moments where there was cooperation and working together, like Moorish Spain was such a beautiful time. of intellect, of ferment, of science, of art, of culture, of music, and of Jews and Muslims and Christians all living and working together in peace. Why not do that again? And it's not going to happen from Gaza killing 1,000 Israelis and Israeli bombing thousands of Gazans. That's not going to bring peace. Never has, anyway. I don't foresee it doing it in this case. It'll just turn into another attack, another attack, another attack, another attack. At some point, as a species, as a culture, as an intelligent civilization, we have to say it's enough. Stop. Just stop. Just stop it. How to stop it is by allowing yourself to be at peace within. If I have peace within, there'll be peace without. This is like one of the oldest cliches in the spiritual world. But it's cliche because it's true. What if Jews and Palestinians sat together, drank medicine, and sang to each other? I experienced that. So beautiful. Enemies becoming brothers and sisters. That's why I think ayahuasca is so important and why it is such a travesty that it's illegal. It's a travesty. It's not unjust, it's a travesty.
Yeah, thank you. That reminder that basically any realities that we are hoping to create, that there's another cliche, we create our own reality. And the reality that is being projected right now, which affects millions of people across the world, this is the collective reality, the collective psyche at play. This is literally what is going on in people's minds, hearts, and souls and psyches. This global conflict is all a projection of inner conflicts. And, I've been thinking about, like many other people, I've been really like immersed in thinking about and understanding peace better, or trying to think about how can I bring more peace to the world? How can I be more peace? And I've been sitting with the slogans a lot, particularly, slogans such as "No one is free until everyone is free." Right. And I was thinking about that. I was like, well, no one is going to be free until you free yourself. If you want for there to be freedom for the people at large in the world, work on freeing yourself and liberating yourself from these inner shackles of hatred, of anger, of aggression, of division, of the shadow that is manipulating you, just like it's manipulating millions of other people in the world right now. And I really do feel like this is one of the lessons of our times that, that's coming to us through plant medicine, ayahuasca, through integration, through Kabbalah, through mindfulness, Eastern philosophy. All of these teachings literally are saying the exact same thing. And in other words, is go within and you will discover God. Own that you are God, and God will be present on the planet.
What if we just replace God with love? The word.
Well, God is love. Yeah, exactly.
What if? What if?
What
I
if?
would have a lot.
So I'm curious, since this is an integration-minded podcast, I'm curious what you, especially since you've been on the scene for so long, what are your thoughts about this modern interpretation that is called psychedelic integration?
Good question. I have never been to an integration circle. Still, I mean, they didn't exist when I started doing this work. I don't know, somebody at some point thought about the idea of integration and created it as a practice, which I think is wonderful because apparently many people need it. Um, I'm not an authority on integration work. I mean, we have councils, as you know. I call them councils since the beginning because I think I'm not trying to do anything to anybody. Nobody's trying to do anything to anybody else. It's not for advice. It's for sharing from the heart. And generally, that seems to be a good start.
Right. How do you
We
feel that ayahuasca practitioners can benefit from
okay.
integrating their experiences?
In ayahuasca work, it's possible to make choices, decisions, and conclusions that are not reality based. For example, this is cliche again, but I'm sitting in ceremony, the psychedelic lights are going, the music is great. Yeah, 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 everything's amazing. And I get a download. I had a download in ceremony that I was to have ayahuasca tattooed to my forehead. People do this. I mean, that may be ayahuasca, but people do it. You know, ayahuasca told me to get a tattoo of a plant on my shoulder. Ayahuasca told me, this is my favorite ayahuasca told me story. Okay. I'm in a ceremony in the jungle, beautiful ceremony. It was strong medicine. It was great. And there were these two people sitting next to each other. They never met. They didn't know each other's name. Ayahuasca told them to get married. And the next night in ceremony, they had a wedding ceremony. 2 weeks later, they divorced. You know, ayahuasca doesn't speak English. I mean, sometimes maybe, but you know, it's why I think it's incredibly important. And what I tell people in my ceremonies, do not act on any information, download suggestions, or requests from ayahuasca in your life for at least 2 months. Used to be 2 weeks. That wasn't enough. Now it's 2 months. Other than things like eat better, get better sleep, exercise more, meditate more, don't watch so much TV, don't spend so much time on Facebook or Instagram. Things that make sense, do. But things like move, get a job, quit your job, change your name, especially. Um, Ayahuasca told me to change my name. um, don't do those things for 2 months. If it still makes sense in 2 months, then do them. Because the voice that so many people, okay, we do not have yet the skill set to differentiate the voice of love from the voice of our mind. And in ayahuasca ceremonies, those two things get particularly intertangled so that the information or advice given is not necessarily clear, is not necessarily from beauty, is not necessarily for your highest good. You know, and that's why choosing the ceremony that you go to, a person goes to, is incredibly important. Incredibly important. Because there are people that are so-called ceremony leaders that are giving people really bizarre ideas during ceremony. Their own agenda, their own problems, their own perception of reality is being fed into people. Conspiracy theories, for example. I've heard stories, you know, and it's not what ayahuasca's for. It's not what ayahuasca's for, in my utterly and totally not humble opinion.
No, I concur. One of the teachings that I've actually learned from you, Richard, that I include in my top 5 integration guidelines is, and I'm quoting you because I remember you said you typically this is a sentence that you share in the council circle the next morning, is if it seems like a really good idea now, it will still be a really good idea later.
Yes.
And then this is probably one of the most solid pearls of wisdom that is so specific again, to integrate what we call integration is an integration broadly, psychedelic integration broadly is taking the insights that have been witnessed in ceremony and embodying them in daily life, living them in daily life. So you can augment your reality and the world's reality for the better. But the whole concept of, the medicine told me, I agree. This is something that I also, another teaching that I share is that the medicine doesn't tell you anything. I mean, it amplifies a voice within you or a part within you that potentially was suppressed, dormant, buried under other voices. And until you really get your foot in the psychological processing and the integration door and learn how to differentiate between all these different voices, and most importantly, understand their roots and motives and the energies that are behind them, that are feeding them, it is highly suggested to use a very high level of discernment and literally just look at the palette of insights as information. This is how I like to look at it, as information. Like, I've received information of some type. I'm not going to name where it's coming from. It's just information that I have. And I'm going to allow this information to sit on my table. And I'm going to keep working with this information for at least a month or two before I decide to take a piece of information and swallow it again and put it in my body, literally putting it in my body, embodying it and turning it into a part of me, potentially forever. So I feel like that's a really solid piece of advice, and thank you for that.
Sure. Because we don't know. We don't always know the source of the information we're getting. We don't know the source. And, the source could be a movie I saw when I was 5 years old, bubbling up out of the unconsciousness into the conscious through the effects of the medicine. It could be the, rose-colored, horseshit-colored glasses I put on decades ago that I never took off and forget that I'm wearing them. The veils through which I'm experiencing reality. It could be anything. It could be the thoughts of the person sitting next to you in ceremony. There is definitely some uh, risk, danger, benefit of thought transference going on.
Yes, absolutely.
So clarity is so important, and clarity does not come in words. I should, I shouldn't. So this is my paradigm of this work. If I am whole and integral within my heart, if I'm connected to the source of love within, if I take time in my life to strengthen and preserve and grow that connection, the medicine's going to tell me to do that more. Because it's good. It's good. It's not going to tell me in words. It's going to tell me about making that more and more beautiful and a part of my life. If it's a good idea, you can do it right away. That's why I say if it's exercise, if it's diet, if you change your diet, eat better, be more with your family, be more loving, whatever it is, those are things you put into effect right away because they make sense. Yeah. Getting married to the person next to you, probably not a great idea. Changing your name. Yeah. Not just a spiritual ego. Deciding after 2 ceremonies that you're a shaman and you're going to be serving medicine the next week, that's not a good thing to follow. Yeah.
And this is probably one of the most common insights that, and I want to open a retreat center, right? Or Ayahuasca told me to open a retreat center. Those two are the top 2 that I found. I literally feel, well, this is like my opinion now that I've seen it numerous times with clients, of course, with myself, went through that process myself. I literally feel like this type of insight can be seen as a rite of passage into understanding who we are, into understanding the potential of psychedelic and plant medicine substances, into the potentiality that they can have for us and the ways that they can impact our life. And just by understanding that, again, using that as information, taking a step back and assuming the position of being in the captain of discernment and taking a stand, which I think, and there are actually like multiple myths that I would have loved to unpack with you, Richard. Maybe we can have another podcast on it, but I feel like that there are so many myths, and not just ayahuasca culture, but I feel like a big part of it is the myth of surrender, the myth of doing the work, the myth of the medicine told me. Like there are lots of like slogans that we have in the community that I feel like have been I feel like they have conditioned us to give our power away to the medicine space, the facilitators, just kind of like throwing all of like our right mind and our critical thinking onto this modality. And it becomes so dangerous for people because they lose themselves into the medicine. And then unfortunately and unintentionally, they end up causing a lot more harm, not just to themselves, but potentially to the community, because they didn't have the right tools or the right support system or the right narratives or guidance that would support them again through this rite of passage of this potential immediate like inflation of I'm here to serve medicine, I'm here to be of service, I'm here to open a retreat center, let me go ahead and do that, to a point where like literally like I remember like when I was in LA like years and years ago, there was someone that literally was advertising ayahuasca ceremonies on Meetup and serving ayahuasca in Dixie cups with a Gayatri mantra on loop as the music of the ceremony. And then he would send the participants home with ayahuasca in a brown bag so they can continue their journey at home.
Oy vey.
True story. True and complete story.
I could tell you some stories. Yeah.
I'll bet.
I want to just say one thing. So
yes.
these cliches of I want to open up a center, I want to serve medicine, I want to, whatever. Go back to the root of that, which is I want to be of service. And maybe the form is something that your mind is telling you. But I want to be of service is a beautiful thing to realize. I want to help. I want to be a part of this world that's heading towards goodness and joy and peace. And I want to open up a center. Don't do it. Unless you have $1 million or two behind you. It's a horrible thing to try to do.
No, even if you do, don't open up a retreat center, even if you're well-funded and resourced. If you just had ayahuasca once or twice or even 5 times, don't yet open a retreat center. Yeah. Just let it sit for a minute.
A year or two for a retreat center, I would say.
Yeah, a year or two at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look at us just giving advice on ayahuasca and integration. Richard, we're coming to the end of our interview. Tell us more about this book.
Oh, yes, my book. Well, it's going to be called The Medicine of Your Life. And it is teaching stories, I would say, the experiences I've had in my life leading up to medicine, plus some really deep learnings that I'm communicating or want to communicate from what I've learned in my life, basically. And it's a good read. I got to tell you that. The stories that I have had in my life are pretty unique and fascinating and, my stories, but I want to share them and things I've never shared before, only shared parts of. And I think it's going to be a very, very good book, have a very good impact on people.
I'm sure it will be.
Yeah.
First of all, you're such an incredible storyteller and healer. And I'm really excited to actually finally see all these stories compiled in a way that, that is almost like an integration of your life's work, right? You're taking all this wisdom and it's turning into this embodied reality. It's turning into this real life thing that we're going to hold. So thank you so much for that. And I'm looking forward to it. And where can people purchase this book?
It will be on Amazon. It's not there yet, but I'm going to do a pre-sale on Amazon as soon as the proofreading is done. It's in the process of that right now. And my website is heartfeather, all one word, heartfeather.com. And there will be definitely links there, both to sign up for my Substack newsletter, where you can read some of the stuff that was in the book that I had to take out because it was too long. And you can sign up. You'll be able to get information on or links to the buying the book, purchasing the book.
Incredible. And of course, we'll have all of these links right under the bio that you didn't want to share with us on my website.
I'll tell you why heart feather in our next interview.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do that. It's a date. Well, we always conclude with the rapid fire round of 5 epic facts about Richard Grossman. Are you ready to shoot?
Okay, good. You ask questions. I'll give you epic facts.
Sounds good? Yes. 5 epic facts. Okay. Listo. What's your favorite psychedelic?
Ayahuasca.
Favorite thing to do after a ceremony?
Sleep.
Yes. Stating the obvious. What's one big lesson psychedelics have taught you?
It's an infinite path. And that whereas a person may feel that they're healed and that they are realized or enlightened, there's only healing, realizing, and enlightening. It's an infinite process.
Deep. Who is one person, dead or living, that you would sit in ceremony with?
You mean as a participant or as they're in my ceremony?
Your choice.
My choice. In my ceremony. Oh, there's so many. Good Lord. I think having Stephen Hawking's in ceremony would be interesting. Yeah.
What's your secret to living epic?
Get those bricks out of the backpack.
One.
Get those bricks out of the backpack. And furthermore, do what your true heart wants to do and don't confuse the emotional baggage with your heart. Be what you are. Be that which you are. And that which you are is pure, perfect love. Everything else is bricks in the backpack. Sounds epic.
Don't let anyone else tell you different. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a heart tickling conversation. See what I did there? Heart feather, heart tickling. Thank you, dear Richard. Always an honor. Thank you so much. Para todos. And everyone that has been listening, thank you so much for tuning into our podcast. And remember, it's not the psychedelic, it's the integration.